Hi, I'm your Wegener and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. In my last news video, we discussed how heat haze built up in your lens hood can ruin your images, and this week I wanted to follow that up with a few tips on what you can do when you're confronted with strong heat haze and can't just take your lens hood off and make it all disappear. The other day, a differently colored Rosella showed up in my backyard and I really wanted to take a few photos of it, but when I stepped outside, it was kind of mid-morning, I could already see sort of heat flickering in the air. And so then the only thing you can do if you still want to get a few sharp images is to shoot as wide open as possible, select a very fast shutter speed, and then your highest frame rate and just fire away. Most of your images will still be kind of blurry or don't look like they're fully in focus or just kind of look strange, but there will also be some shots where you're able to kind of get a little break in the heat haze waves and get away with a few sharp images, and this is exactly what I was able to do. Now, of course, because I was relatively close to the bird, that helped as well, and there will be situations where you're further away from your subject and confronted with heat haze where it's just impossible to shoot and you have to pack up. But generally speaking, if you're confronted with heat haze, shooting wide open with a very fast shutter speed and then firing away can still give you images in very unlikely scenarios, and you may end up with a shot that's usable even though most of the other shots were ruined. Over the last few months, a few of you guys commented that my sound was either too quiet or was clipping in certain areas, and so I changed the export settings for my videos, and I've already applied that to the last 2 or 3 videos. So hopefully the image quality is better now, but the sound should also be improved because I'm lifting the more quiet parts of the soundtrack, and I'm also making sure that nothing is clipping. So if the sound is better now, or maybe not better, let me know down there in the comments because I like to tweak it so you can get the best possible viewing and listening experience. And if you need help to set up your cameras to perfection or want an editing workflow that will allow you to transform all your RAW files, even the most difficult to edit ones, with ease, check out my Canon, Nikon and Sony setup guides and my Lightroom and Photoshop masterclasses down there in the description. My setup guides will help you to transform your camera into a real powerhouse and get your autofocus locked onto target so you can get razor sharp RAW files in the field every single time. And in my masterclasses, I teach you step by step all the important tools and techniques you need to learn to be able to turn those RAW files from the field into stunning final images that you can share with the world. But don't just take my word for it. Check out the amazing reviews I receive on a daily basis from many happy photographers who I've helped to set up their cameras and also improve their editing skills dramatically. Let's talk about the topic that many of you will probably find a little bit disappointing, and that is the R7 Mark II. I've said it throughout the year that it's very unlikely that the camera will be launched this year, but now Canon Rumors also seems to confirm that, saying that the camera is not going to come in 2025 and that we are likely going to see the camera sometime in 2026. Now I won't speculate when that camera will actually come out because we've been burned with that on the R6 Mark III for almost a year, but if I get some solid information, I will definitely share it with all of you. But for now, it seems almost certain that the next cameras we're going to get is the C50, the R6 Mark III, and then also a few lens announcements in November and December. And after that, it's basically anyone's guess. Speaking of the R6 Mark III, we now finally know that it will be launched on November the 6th. And this time around, this information actually comes from an official Canon channel, so we can be sure that this will happen on November the 6th, sometime in the middle of the night in the US. What surprises me the most about the rumor specs of the camera is that there's basically no flaw, and it doesn't seem like the cripple hammer has kind of hit the camera anywhere. Of course, we won't have a stacked sensor in the R6 Mark III, and it will likely have a very similar readout speed to the current R6 Mark II, which means that we will still have to deal with rolling shutter and image wobbles, but besides that, at least on paper, the specs sound pretty amazing. For me personally, one key factor in how much I will use the R6 Mark III is how good the video specs are. And if the camera can do 4K 60 oversampled in a higher quality and also can do 4K 120 frames a second uncropped. If it can do both of these things, I think I will use this camera a lot. And what I also like is that we get the 34 megapixels in stills mode. Now of course we have that rolling shutter and image wobbles, but it also gives us a nice buffer for cropping compared to like an R6 Mark II, an R3 or even an R1. Of course, we all have our fingers crossed that the R6 Mark III will also have very good autofocus, but since the R6 Mark II is already sporting a very good autofocusing system, I would expect very good video and stills autofocus also in the R6 Mark III. And if you actually want to see more about how the different autofocusing systems on Canon, Nikon and Sony compare, check out the video that I posted last week. From all we can read about the R6 Mark III so far, it seems like that it will be very similar to the R5 Mark II and the R6 Mark II when it comes to the body and the overall design. Now it won't have that top LCD screen that the R5 series has, but it seems to have a very similar resolution in the rear LCD screen and also the EVF, which is great, and a nice upgrade to the current R6 Mark II. Having all the buttons and dials in the same spot is very important if you want to use all the cameras side by side, because it makes it so much easier to switch from one camera to another. But there's one thing I wish Canon would change in future cameras, and that is the horrible positioning of the photo and video switch on the upper left hand side. If you're holding a big lens, it's basically impossible to use that switch, and so it moving to the back of the camera would be greatly appreciated. One thing that excited me reading about the R6 Mark III is that it will likely come with one CF Express Type B card slot, which means it will be so much faster to write our RAW files to the card, which is very important because now we have higher resolution and still 40 frames per second. So not being bottlenecked anymore by one SD card is fantastic to see. All in all, so far, the R6 III sounds like a pretty amazing camera, doesn't it? And I would also expect it, of course, to come with full RAW pre-capture. And then there's really hard to find any flaws with the body other than maybe not having a stacked sensor. Would you guys agree? We also heard some interesting, a little bit confusing and exciting rumors about Sony this week. Sony Alpha Rumors posted that they have received 2 different sets of specs for the upcoming A7 IV. The first rumor says that the camera will come with a 40 megapixel non-stacked sensor and will only shoot at 15 frames per second. And to me, that would be my least preferred option because I think we already have a slow, higher resolution camera in the A7R5. So I would really like to see speed and good image quality in the A7 IV. So personally, I like the second rumor much more that says that the camera will come with a 33 megapixel stacked sensor and is hopefully also much faster, which I would definitely like to see. If we can get that camera with 33 megapixels, a good readout speed and maybe 20 to 30 frames per second, I think it can be a big hit. And I think it also needs the high frame rate because the Nikon Z6 III and the Canon R6 Mark II and upcoming R6 Mark III will shoot at 20 or 40 frames per second. So I think the A7 V definitely needs to kind of step up the game a little bit when it comes to the frames per second. Now I know a lot of you guys don't really like high frames per second, but I really enjoy using it in the field and it gives me chances to get certain shots that I couldn't get otherwise. Now I'm not entirely sold on either of these rumors though, because I think 40 megapixels non-stacked is very unlikely, but I'm also not sure if Sony will do 33 megapixel and fully stacked. So in the end, we will just have to wait and see what happens, but hopefully we get a nice and fast sensor. And when it comes to the announcement date, it seems like the camera will be announced between sort of mid-November and early December. Another rumor that popped up this week is that Sony is working on 2 different 100 to 400mm lenses. And this actually makes a lot of sense because I've heard a few times now that the current Sony 100 to 400mm lens is not really the best lens in the world. So upgrading that lens would make a lot of sense for Sony. What I found the most interesting is not that they seem to work on a smaller, lighter lens with a variable aperture, but that they're actually also wanting to release a 100 to 400mm constant f4 lens. Now, I've never really thought that I wanted an f4 100 to 400mm lens because usually I like those lenses because they're very versatile and small and light. But the idea of having a fast f4 100 to 400mm lens is definitely growing on me for fast birds in flight and action photography and also kind of low light action photography where a 300mm lens might be too inflexible. An f4 100 to 400mm lens would likely be rather big and heavy, but I think the advantages of it could probably outweigh those disadvantages and it would truly be a unique lens. I also think that having new 100 to 400mm lenses could definitely make the 400 to 800mm lens also more interesting. Because currently I think a lot of people have the 200 to 600mm lens and haven't really thought about upgrading. But if you can get a new 100 to 400mm lens and then get a 400 to 800mm lens, that could give you an amazing 1-2 punch to travel with, for instance. Speaking about Sony, they've also been able to push some of their cameras into the top selling cameras on Amazon and other camera stores because there's currently huge discounts on the A7R5 and the A7 IV. So if you're in the market for a good deal on a decent camera, this is definitely something worth checking out because you can save almost up to $1,000 on these cameras currently. And there's also a few interesting Nikon deals going around, like an Z8 and 180 to 600 being on a big discount at B&H Photo. For the last little while, I've been trying out PGYTech's new Camera Strap Pro, and usually I'm not a big fan of camera straps, but this one I actually quite like and can see myself using a fair bit, especially if I'm using multiple cameras in the field. For instance, if I have a big 600mm lens on a tripod, I can have a 100 to 500 with another R5 on this strap right around my shoulder and rip it up whenever I need it. What I like about the strap is how securely it sits on your shoulder. It basically doesn't move around at all, and it also has that second strap to secure it into place. And then the connection to the camera is also fantastic, with one camera plate coming with the strap that you can attach to the bottom of the camera or the lens foot, and then also 2 connection points on that plate that both click into the strap. And having those 2 points definitely gives us an extra peace of mind. What I also enjoyed about the straps is that you can either have the camera slide along the strap, so it's very easy to pick it up, shoot, and then drop it down again. Or you also have a little button that locks the camera in a certain position on the strap if you don't want to have it bouncing around. All in all, I must admit that these camera straps have probably converted me into using straps a lot more in the field, especially if I'm on a boat, for instance, or shooting with 2 bodies. What is your preferred way of carrying your camera? Are you using straps like this? Do you have a different method? Are you using a different brand? And are you happy with them? Let me know down there in the comments. And if you want to check out these PGY Tech straps, I've linked them for you down there in the description with a discount code. And if one strap is not enough for you, they also have this crazy master strap that allows you to carry 2 cameras and also binoculars on your chest. I'll also give them a try out in the field, but for me, I think the most suitable one will probably be the Pro. And lastly, I've heard that the Nikon ZR cameras are shipping all over the world now. And if you have ordered one, I would love to hear from you guys down there in the comments. How is your experience with that camera so far? Is it living up to the hype? And while we're on the topic of Nikon, they've also recently released a big firmware update 3.0 for the Nikon ZF, adding a few interesting features to that camera. And now it's time for you guys to let me know all your thoughts about the upcoming gear down there in the comments. Also, please give me a thumbs up for the video, check out my setup guide, my masterclasses, and my channel membership. And of course, hit that subscribe button so we can grow our community. And I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye.